Hey everyone, so I'm back from a 2-week road trip in Europe and getting back into things, and long overdue for a cryptocurrency and Bitcoin video. So we're going to get straight into that today. We're going to take a look at some of the short-term price action and what is most likely to happen this month, and still give you those key reasons as to why Bitcoin has got a good shot of hitting that 28 to 36k mark that we spoke about in the last month. So let's get straight into the video. Now, if we go back to the last video, you know exactly where I bought, and I was transparent with my buys because I said that I had basically had an average buy-in, as you can see here, of around $20,000, and I'm happy to add it in if we were going any lower. But as we suspected before, that when we move really far away from that 200-week moving average, just as we can see over here, it's typically a really good buying opportunity for Bitcoin. So whenever we're about that 40-50% away from that moving averages, you typically get that snap back, and I've spoken about that in my moving average video, and also of course the 200-week moving average for Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. And you can see as well that we just bring up the Bitstamps chart over here, that I tried to get the point across is that it's not necessarily that it has to touch the 200-week moving average and then bounce straight up. It's an area of value where you typically tend to see, you know, key price action take place, and you can see that sometimes we might just bounce off it straight, as we did in 2018. We might puncture down in it through it like we did in COVID, or maybe we basically just loiter around and consolidate underneath it for a few weeks and then try to move back up. So that was my thinking when I was getting into those buy zones, and yeah, those are the two main reasons that I was buying at those levels. Furthermore, we are within the date range that I specified in my video 2 months ago, when we were exactly at this candle in June, and I was saying that typically at around 70 days to 100 days before we get a crossover of that 50-week moving average and the 100-week moving average is when we typically tend to see a bottom for Bitcoin. You can see that historically in the past when that's happened, this is when we get that bottom in Bitcoin. So I've got extra confluence that this might be the potential start of you know, some sort of reversal, at least sideways accumulation for Bitcoin. We can also see that according to 4-year cycle theory, that sometime around 550 to 500 days, we typically tend to see a bottoming pattern in Bitcoin. And usually that's when we get that impulsive move and that final leg down. And that's exactly what we've seen here as well. So there's definitely a possibility, or you at least have to be open to the possibility, that we are you know, at a cycle bottom for Bitcoin, although we can move lower. Now, whilst we have multiple reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin, because we're at these macro time frame indicators that are showing us strong areas of support, and that we've got a date range of sometime between June and Q4 this year that we're probably going to see a bottom, is that, you know, we can well be flagging in the same way and creating a bear flag as we did in the last 2 or 3 times in the last year that you can see here. Okay, that is definitely a possibility, so we need to keep an eye out for that. And eventually Bitcoin will not just bear flag and move down all the time. There will be a time when it starts to accumulate sideways and will actually start that next uptrend and that next rally in cryptocurrency. My thinking here is that $17,500 could well be the low. Now, the probabilities of this really increasing is that if we are managing to hold this low moving into Q4 of this year, and we move into, say, like October, November, December, and we're still well clear of this $17,500, I will start to potentially deploy more cash into my own positions, because the way that I'm looking at it is I'm still respecting the 4-year cycle until proven otherwise. And I'll look for some sort of dip to potentially buy into that. But if we break $17,500 sometime between now and you know, September, October, I think that definitely opens up the door to tap into this order block, which is my last worst case scenario for Bitcoin, at about $14,000 to $10,000. But that is still not my, you know, my base case at the moment. If you had to ask me what I think would happen here, I think that likely we're either going to tap into $28,000 and $36,000 potentially first, to basically, you know, really finish off this move. It's definitely a potential for me, because I know that that's where the CME gap is, and the 200-day moving average. You can see just over here in red. That's also a key area that Bitcoin likes to retest in these bear markets, to see if we're ready to basically springboard and move any higher. So that's still my contention, is that, you know, we basically stay here. It does look a little bit corrective at the minute for sure, but if you look at this on the weekly time frame, okay, is that you can see that we are starting to create, it doesn't look so much of a bear flag on the weekly time frame. It does look like we've got the potential that if we keep climbing higher and we see another 2 or 3 weekly red candles, then weekly green candles, sorry, then I think that, you know, this is going to start to look impulsive, and we're going to get a little bit more idea of you know, if that bottom is going to be in. And if we just take a look at the Bitstamp chart as well on, you know, that really big time frame, we've also spoken about this trend line, this 7-year trend line, which Bitcoin is currently holding, and again, another reason why Bitcoin could well be setting up for a you know, a macro bottom in this bear market. So my bias at the moment is still cautiously optimistic, and I think that you know, we've got a good shot of hitting 28k, at which point I would deleverage from some of my open positions and still hold and wait for our sign of the market. If we hit 28k, I'm looking at 36k as the next level above that, to see if we potentially deviate and maybe cause some sort of lower high, and maybe move into some sort of continued you know, sideways accumulation, and do something like this, which has been my base case you know, for quite a while now. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm going to give you some bonus content now, so that you can stay one step ahead of the market and know what I'm looking out for and what I am doing. Obviously, like the video as well if you've made it this far. But what you notice is that every time that Bitcoin not only comes out of bear market bottoms, as it did in 2015, as it did in 2018, okay, is that if we see some kind of impulsive move, as you can see here, in the last couple of bear markets, where we've got that massive shoot up, and everyone thought, right, that was completely the end of the bear market, okay, whilst it was, okay, it did always come back and retest the order block that we broke out from, which is the price range, okay, that we break out from when we're accumulating at the bottom of the bear market. So what I'm looking out for here potentially for Bitcoin is that if we get a few more green candles and this starts to look a little bit more impulsive, and we get some kind of like mini blow off top, okay, where we get maybe like 100 to 200% increase in Bitcoin, okay, and we basically just leave this station. Okay, I think a lot of people are going to be calling for a bull market at that point, and the bear market is completely over. But I'm going to be very cautious at that moment, because I am looking for Bitcoin to potentially, if we can reach this area in the next 1 or 2 months, that's 28 to 36k in particular, and we haven't retested some of these lower 20s, I am expecting at least a retest of those areas at the back end of 2022, and maybe come down and retest that order block, where we can really start to finally form some kind of base. So that's another thing that I'm looking out for, that we always see at the bottom of these bear markets. And to be honest with you, typically whenever we break out of key price action, as you can see, just multiple occasions, we always come back, retest, move higher. That's how the market flows. So definitely something that I'm looking out for over the remainder of the year. Unsurprisingly, taking a look at the DXY, you can see that this correction and this move down in the dollar, okay, which was in a parabolic impulsive move to the upside, has given Bitcoin some relief. Now, obviously, if we can move down and test some of these levels at about $102 to $100, this is going to provide further a good environment for Bitcoin to provide a little bit more relief to the upside, and maybe that is what coincides with our move to 28 or 36,000 potentially, okay? Because also another thing that I want you to look out for, this happens quite a lot and people don't really pick up on this, is that if the DXY actually makes a bit more of a move to the downside and still continues to correct, but Bitcoin has not yet made maybe a higher price target from current levels, and we're still loitering at about 22 to 24,000, then I would expect a delayed reaction and a little bit of lag on Bitcoin. And that's definitely a trade that I'd be looking to potentially take, you know, if that happens. So just look for a potentially delayed reaction if Bitcoin doesn't move, you know, systematically with the DXY if it continues to claw its way down. Obviously, if the DXY continues to show a little bit more impulsive strength and that maybe moves above $109, and we spoke about, you know, a key level at about $111, okay, then obviously expect that to put more pressure on Bitcoin, at least to the downside, or move sideways. Last thing, it goes without saying, I would not be touching any altcoins at the minute. Still not the time for me. I'm still looking for altcoins to basically put in potential lows. Definitely a possibility that altcoins can continue to climb higher and outpace Bitcoin in the short term, but I do think that you know, we're going to have time for the altcoins, and Bitcoin is still the better hold, especially in this risky environment. And although Ethereum has done pretty well and seen a nice bounce of about you know, 2x on your money, you know, I wouldn't be FOMOing into any of these projects just yet. Let's wait for a little bit more confirmation of what Bitcoin is going to do for the remainder of the year. So if you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Loads more videos coming out. I'm getting back on everything this week. Until the next one, peace out.